Grok 4.6 chose parts better than most builders would because it asked better questions. Then, it wrote build instructions like a child, explaining how to make a peanut butter sandwich. This is Smoke Test. Let's get into it. As we jump off into part selection, what we see from the initial prompt is that the entire response is literally nothing but questions. As somebody who spent many hours in meetings with engineers and executives on product teams to sit through and refine the idea and really debate what should be built, to see a project like this where the entire first response is nothing but 13 questions spread across 7 different organized sections, that makes me really happy. It is the only way for any of these AI models to have any idea what you're even talking about. The only way to get to a good project outcome is really just to sit and ask questions. We've seen similar amounts of questions out of ChatGPT, but nothing that made it the entire response before we even attempted to build a project. That's a really good thing because it's not trying to guess. It's going to sit and wait for you to tell it what you want, and then it will do the work. As we see right off the bat, the project is split up into 2 functional systems. The project is an object detection camera looking down onto a desk and then streaming that video after detecting and identifying those objects to a friend who can talk back and forth. It's the standard project that we've run through all of these models. And what we see here is that these 2 functional systems are capture and detection and then streaming the audio video stream to the friend and then handling the comms back and forth. What we see in the reasoning behind how it talks about and how it thinks about this project, we see 2 parallel systems that really emerge, specifically in Grok 4.6. This is important because they are separate, but they influence each other. If you keep them completely separate, then you lose the interdependence that really is required. As you think about the approach to this project, if you choose the wrong hardware, you can't detect correctly, or you may not be able to stream because you've got the wrong hardware. Well, if you have no fundamental basis in reality and how the software is going to work, then you choose the wrong hardware. And so you really need both of these pieces, even though they're really separate, to operate together. And so that's what we see. We see it thinking like a builder who's used to building things like this. That's a really good thing to see. Also, we see a lot of optionality for the future. We have something like a solid state drive that'll really maintain the longevity of the training videos, or a better camera to slightly improve the optics. Now, it's not a necessity, but it brings them to your attention to say, hey, look, here's the budget that we've put together for these parts. But if you want to keep going, here's where we would say you should spend that money. It brings them up right to the front so that you know where to go on the next step. Maybe if you don't get what you want initially, or if you want to take it a step further. In addition, and this is the first time I've actually seen this, we get a do not buy list with reasoning. As an example, the Pi Camera Module 3, it says, hey, don't do this. You've got a ribbon cable and ribbon cables suck. I'm paraphrasing. So you've got this arm that's going to move around a little bit. If you're moving it around, the traces break and they fail. So because of that, don't choose this camera that's going to force you to use this cable. We see that right from the beginning of a do not buy list. Because of the extensive questions in the beginning, what we get is better components that lead to a better outcome. I've been saying this for a long time. More questions equals better project. But there's a balance, because at a certain point, like, I'm not going to answer all your questions. They're too complicated. We get a good balance here with 13 different questions. The bad part about Grok 4.6, though, is that it does not reply with fast answers. Now, I should caveat, 4.6 right now is used as part of their build beta. We'll describe that a little bit more in the final thoughts, but it's available online. I should be able to build hardware with it, but it takes a long time. In addition, half of the page was taken up with some visualization preview. It reminded me of back in the day when Windows Media Player was a thing, and you'd get those kind of funky geometric shapes that were twisting and turning and doing literally nothing, but they called it a visualizer because you could stare at it for hours. That's kind of what we see on the right-hand side. It doesn't really play any functional part in terms of the user interface for what we're doing. I was more just confused than anything else just to see it there if it wasn't going to do anything. Kind of minimal, but it took up half the space. I would have loved to have seen, a flowchart diagram or an AI generation of what this could look like. None of that happened. It just kind of looked like nothing. Once we select parts, then we go to the parts list and put links to everything. The good part of the parts list is that, and this should be default for everybody, we stayed within budget. What we get here is a project that we set a budget for, and the parts list come back, and hey, look at that. We're within budget. That's really nice. It's pretty trivial, but it is nice. And not for nothing, every single link I've clicked on, every single one, they have all worked. That is the first time I have seen every single link work. If you've been with us for a while, you'll know we've had some disasters when it comes to links not working. I'm looking at you, Gemini. But here in Grok 4.6, they all work. It's the first time. It's phenomenal. Also, gave some optionality based on stock levels. The first option is to buy it as a kit, but if that's not in stock, here's how to buy them all separately if you have to. That's the first time we've really seen that anywhere. We've seen some people care about stock levels and give some optionality, but not from a kit to an a la carte type of suggestion. In addition, with some of that optionality, we see that kind of baked in here, even more so in the parts list of those upgrades based on the price and really which one you should purchase first, second, third, fourth, and so on. In part selection, we talked about the do not buy list with reasoning, but we see that extended here in the parts list with a do not substitute. So when you go to buy something, maybe it's available, great, you buy it. Maybe it's not, don't substitute it with a version that may look similar, but functionally won't be the same. It's a good thing to see in any of these models because you answered this question and we're doing what you asked us to do. Don't substitute it with something outside of that. The bad thing about the parts list, though, is that for some reason, and I don't know why this persists, it still gets the price of the Raspberry Pi wrong initially. Now, we see that corrected a little bit later when we go to fully build out the parts list with links. But for whatever reason, especially when it's talking about the budget, we see it incorrect. You go from about $80 to $180. For some reason, they still can't account for this. Grok also broke the parts list up, and instead of a single parts list, it broke it up into where you order from. Now, functionally, that makes sense. I don't want to juggle 7 different orders from 7 different retailers and pay 7 different versions of shipping. And so it makes sense that you would lump these together into an order where you can buy the majority of these parts. But the problem is that they string this out in a way in the UI that makes it really difficult just to keep track of it. So it makes sense when I'm going to order, but as I'm trying to analyze and figure out whether I've got all of the parts here, it makes that really difficult because I can't see them in one place. I've got to scroll back and forth, and it just makes it difficult to track to know that it made the right decisions. Additionally, I actually had to ask for those optional parts to be added back in because for whatever reason, it decided since they were optional that it shouldn't do the work and put them in the parts list. But if you're going to say they're optional, give me an optional link and give me the option to go buy it. We see that here in Grok that it doesn't add those back in, but I ask and boop, there they are. Once we have a parts list, then we go to the build instructions. I will say there's not a lot of good things here in the build instructions with Grok 4.6. It does include 4 critical gotchas. It could cost you an evening or a weekend if you're struggling and you're having to look it up online. Those are useful. It saves you a ton of time, but that's about the only good thing about these build instructions. First off, in terms of the bad side of the build instructions, thinking for 4 minutes should get you more than what it gave. The instructions really fit into a single page. The point of the build instructions is to provide instruction who don't know what to do. And so the way they write this is really kind of odd. We've always known that Grok has been very brief in its build instructions, and I've been critical of that in the past. And we see that again here, but this is almost the worst version of that. It doesn't even explain the high-level pieces. It just says them. Pi on the desk, camera on the lamp, USB 3 down the arm with strain relief. Those aren't even full sentences. They're literally just comments or phrases that you're supposed to already know. It reminds me of that old video where the dad is asking his kids to tell him how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and they tell him the first time, and what he winds up with is something that looks nothing like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. He got the knife out on the counter and he put it down, and then he scooped the peanut butter out with his hands and he slathered it all over the bread, but nobody said to put the bread together, and it was a mess. It reminds me a lot of that. There's no instructions. There are phrases that you're supposed to already know, and that's not good. And so we're kind of left with peanut butter all over our hands. There's just not a whole lot here. A couple of final thoughts. XAI markets this model, 4.6, as their frontier model built for long-running agents and ambitious, interactive, and visual work. What that really means is that it's not really built for hardware. We said we would talk about this earlier. Grok build is really Claude code for Grok. That may explain some of the UI craziness that took up half the page. Was the UI really for something that's not even supposed to be in a browser, should be in the terminal, but it's available on the web, and if it's available, we're going to test it to see how it does for hardware. I mentioned this in a previous video as well, but Elon Musk has since reiterated that all of SpaceX's engineering data is going to be built into the next version of Grok. That is data that ChatGPT simply cannot get. ChatGPT can't get it. Anthropic can't get it. None of these other frontier models are going to have access to the information that is contained in the SpaceX data set. There's no company better suited for engineering level hardware scientific data than SpaceX. They're doing things that nobody else in the world has done, much less the US. And then to take all of that data and incorporate it into their next model, I think could be revolutionary. We'll see when it gets here. That's my hope. That's what I'd like to see. But at the end of the day, we're going to be honest. And if it's not, as we think about AI for hardware, the real question becomes who has the best hardware type of data. We've seen Google spend $10 million to buy up all of the Spirit Airlines data. Maybe there's some level of information from a hardware perspective that they can bring into that. Maybe not. Maybe it's just logistics. Maybe it's all trash. I don't know, but they spent $10 million on it. And so as we move along and to see how these models progress, the real question is what data lives behind those models and what it's being trained on. It should be really interesting to see kind of how the different flavors of these go, and specifically when it comes to SpaceX, see how that influences XAI and Grok as we move into the future. Do me a favor. If you like these videos and you want to see more, hit that like and subscribe button. It helps the channel out so we can keep making these. And if you want more of the information we just recapped in your inbox, sign up for our weekly newsletter on AI for hardware. If you sign up today, we'll give you 10% off anything you purchase. You can find it at smoketest.show. That's smoketest.show. This has been Smoke Test. My name's Brandon. We'll see y'all next time.